We have tests every day. Quizzes, tests and quizzes every day. Katamathion. 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 All right. What does Matthew mean?
God's gift.
All right, gift of God or God's gift. Thank you, Brett. You got an A+ so far in the class. All right. What was his other name besides Matthew? Matthew what was his name? What was his name? He had two names. Matthew and what? Levi. Matthew Levi. His name was Matthew Levi. All right. Did you learn something new today? All right. It's the first gospel we have in the New Testament. It's written between 50 and 70 A.D. We don't know exactly the exact date on it. He gives the genealogy of Joseph. The genealogy of Joseph. All right. And one of the first things I want to go back and look at is how many times that the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph. The angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph. Just think about it now for a while. I don't know whether I've ever heard anyone teach about all of the different times that the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph. All right? Matthew 1, 20 through 25. Matthew 1, 20 through 25. Let's look at that. We covered this a little bit last week, but let's read it. I try to get you people involved in reading also. And Hannah, oh, she's always a good victim. She's a good reader. Matthew 1, 20.
As he considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream. Joseph, son of David, the angel said, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child within her was conceived by the Holy Spirit.
All right. And 21 there, young lady, you want to read that? No? Yes? No? All right. How about you, Brother Rex?
21.
Uh-huh.
You shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save the people from their sins.
All right. Now, what does Jesus? What should that name be?
Emmanuel?
Well, no. Oh, what? Joshua. His name, it should be Joshua, which means what? Jehovah saves. Now, I want you to understand something. The Jews were not ignorant that he was the Messiah. I want you to understand that thoroughly. The Jews were not ignorant that he was the Messiah. Marilyn, be sure to put Alan down there today. He wanted you to do it, okay? The Word of God and all the evidence around them that they knew exactly who Jesus was. The name Jesus should have been Joshua, which means Jehovah saves. Joshua was a type of Christ, a type of the Messiah to come, because he led Israel into the promised land, didn't he? What is our Messiah going to do for us? Jesus, our Messiah. Joshua, our Messiah. He leads us into salvation, doesn't he? He is the only way in salvation. All right? And he will save his people from their sins. Jehovah saves. All right, and what does Jehovah mean? He who shall become. All right? John 1 and 1, John 1:14, John 1:18, a cross-reference to that. There is when Jehovah became flesh and dwelt among us. And verse number 22, all right, Jessica, Sunshine, you going to read that for me?
Sure. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will be with child and will give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us.
All right, Emmanuel means God with us. God with man, or God with us. God with man, or God with us. That's pretty plain, isn't it? Jesus, Jehovah saves, Jehovah, who shall become, the Messiah of the Old Testament. All of this is really tying up a lot of loose ends, isn't it? Okay? And then number 24, and Joseph arose from his hypnosis. All right, that's what it says in Greek, hypno. Right? Joseph arose from his hypnosis. When God put Adam asleep in the garden, he hypnotized him. The word is hypnose there in the Septuagint. He hypnotized him. We find out American Indians early here, even the Egyptians in Egypt, they hypnotized people when they operated on them. God did his first operation by hypnotizing Adam and took from his, also, that's something else we need to do. Some of you haven't heard this, so we've got new students in here, so we have to go over old material. What did God do? He took Adam, all right? Adam was called, what is the name for man in Hebrew? Not Adam, but what? What's the other name? Ish. Ish. Say Ish. Ish. The name for man is Ish. All right? And of course, the name for humankind is what? Adam. Adam. All right. Two Hebrew words. Now, God put Adam to sleep. He hypnotized him. He put him into a deep hypnotic trance so he would not have any pain. And then it says in Hebrew that he took from his sides, all around Adam, he took from all of Adam's sides, all of his sides, plural. He took from his side, he took flesh, he took blood, and he took bone. All right? Didn't take a rib. They didn't know what to say when they translated King James, so they put rib down there, and then everybody followed suit because they didn't want to change the atmosphere of the translation. All right? He took from his sides, plural, and he formed Isha. Say Isha.
Isha.
Isha means woman in Hebrew. All right? And Isha means, just like it's in English, woman means out of man. All right? Isha in Hebrew means out of man. Now, the whole idea here is that God created man. Now, let's go back and look at that for a few moments. Some have not heard this before. Okay? God did not form man from dirt or dust. He did not. That's surprising, isn't it? Because that's not what the Hebrew says. The Hebrew says that he formed man as he formed the dust of the ground, just in the same manner. Where did the dust from the ground and where did Adam come from? From God. It all came out from God. Okay? So God formed man, and man is a primary creation of God. A primary creation, period. Man didn't come from dirt. He came from the same elements as dirt, but to become dirt, because he is related to the dirt because he came from the same elements as the dirt. Okay? I don't know whether, maybe you won't understand that for a while, but just stick it underneath your hat and think about it for a while. Okay? He created Adam, and Adam was a primary creation right straight from the person and the hands of God. Okay? And then he said he formed him in his what? His shadow casting likeness. And what else? And his what? A blood flowing likeness. And what else? In his spiritual likeness. And what in the 3rd chapter, when the old devil, when he tempted woman, he said, he doesn't want you to be like him. You'll be like gods if you eat from the tree of that knowledge of good and evil. Well, they were already like God. They were made in his image. All right? And he said he doesn't want you to know anything. God was their teacher. He was going to teach it. I don't know how long he'd been teaching. He'd been teaching Adam for a long time. Adam knew about everything. He was the most educated man because God was his teacher that ever lived. All right? But they fell for the story, didn't they? They fell for the baloney. They fell for all the story. Well, God made man in his shadow-casting likeness, in his blood-flowing likeness, and in his spiritual image. Man is triune. He's made in the image of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and there aren't 3 gods either. Don't believe in 3 gods. Don't be a polytheist. All right? Polytheism, you believe in 3 gods. There is only one God. One God you'll ever see is the person of Jesus. That's it. That's his physical image. That's it. All right? The knowledge, what we call the knowledge of God is God the Father, and God the Spirit is what? The Holy Spirit. Now on the cross of Calvary, when Jesus died on the cross of Calvary, the Spirit tasted death. the Father tasted death, and definitely the Son tasted death, didn't he? So triunely, we are not, how many people are we? You can break us up into three parts. We're body, we're soul, and we're spirit. Now we are those three things, but really we're how many? And the Lord said, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is aha." How many? One. He is one. When Jesus was talking to his disciples, his church, when he had called his little church out, we're going to see that pretty soon. He said, one of the disciples, "Show us the Father." And Jesus said, "What? How long have I been with you and you did not know me? All you're going to see of the Father is the Son." That's it. That's what you're going to see. He said, me and the Father are how many? Three? One. Remember that. Don't believe in three gods. There is one God. One God. All right? And He's revealed to us in three personalities. All right? Let's go on a little further now. And Joseph arose from his hypnotic trance and did as the angel of the Lord commanded him. Who was this probably? Who was this guy?
Gabriel.
Prophet Gabriel. All right. And he took her as his wife. He took her to live with him as her wife, but he did not consummate marriage with her until after she had this child. And he kept her as a virgin until she gave birth to a son and called his name what? Jehovah Saves. That's what his name is. All right. So now there we have the first time that the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph. All right. Let's look at the next time. Matthew the 2nd chapter. All right. Matthew the 2nd chapter. Now we have Joseph. He had to go from Nazareth to Bethlehem, because that was his family town, because he is a son of David. He is the heir to the throne of David. Herod was not. Herod was not. We're going to think about the Herods here in a minute too. We'll talk about them ungodly buzzards just a little bit. Matthew, the 2nd chapter, verses 13 and 14. Matthew, Don, are you over there? Can you read out real loud Matthew 2, 13 and 14?
When they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said, "take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt.
All right. Here we have the angel of the Lord appearing to Joseph. Now Joseph, God was using him, wasn't he? He was using him. Now this was not the father of this child. God was the father of this child. All right. God begat himself through Mary. All right. In Genesis, the 3rd chapter, it says there in the curse and the blessing, Genesis 3:15, God told the serpent and the woman and man, he said, her seed shall wrestle with your seed, and her seed, Jesus Christ, will be bruised as to the heel, a crippling blow. But he shall bruise you as to the head, arche, the head, the rosh, all right? And that will deal you a death-dealing blow. That was the first promise of the Messiah in the Bible. All right? First promise of the Messiah. Now again, we have this angel of the Lord, Gabriel, appearing to Joseph, and he appears to them in what? In hypnosis again. Now, I talked to you the other day about hypnosis. Every TV commercial has hypnosis in it. Did you know that? Every TV commercial has hypnosis in it. It repeats things over and over and over to you and talks down to you. You were like a 2 or 3 year old, and they're getting on our level, see. And they keep repeating things over and over and over again and driving it in, and subconsciously. We talked about the subliminal advertisement that he used to do in the television theaters, where they only put one frame of popcorn or soda pop or something in it, or bonbons, and people would go and rush to the place and eat it. But they didn't know that they were seeing this, but they got hungry for this item. That's what you call hypnosis. Hypnosis. All right? Hypnosis. So God, there's good hypnosis and bad hypnosis, okay? Good and bad hypnosis. Hosea 11 and verse 1 is where this is quoted from in the Old Testament. And it says that they were there until the death of Herod, that was spoken by the Lord, the prophet, that it might be fulfilled. Out of Egypt shall I call my son. Hosea 11 and verse 1. Now let's look at the Herod for just a minute. I don't know how far we'll get in this lesson today, but we'll see what we can do. Herod. The Herodian family. The Herodian family were descendants of whom? Who? Esau. Jacob's descendants, Israel's descendants, were supposed to be on the throne of Israel. And the devil is always busy in it. Through the Roman Empire, the devil got Herod's family on the throne. And Herod was a what? A descendant of Esau. Okay? A descendant of Esau. Now Herod the Great. Herod the Great. He was quite a rat. He, remember he built Masada. You hear about Masada? He built Masada. He built the great temple. He built a lot of pagan temples also. The great temple in Jerusalem, he built that. And the Jews just loved him because he built that temple. He just won them over. They're going to build another temple in Jerusalem. They're talking about building it right now. I want you to understand one thing about Israel today. Israel is God's nation. That's the only nation God ever had. But Israel is not in the favor of God today. Israel today are still rebels against God. They are still rebels against God, and God will break them in the tribulation period. He's called them back into the land and everything else, but and they want peace on their terms. All right, peace on their terms. They've got a way that they want to rule the world. But everything in Israel today, they are set up to accept who? The false Messiah. And he's going to leave. He's going to leave. At the end of this tribulation period, well, right in the middle of the tribulation period, they're actually, God's going to be ready to use them. They're going to flee to Petra. Then he will save them. Everything's going to be bad over there in the Middle East. We're going to end up in a war, and I'm going to tell you something, it's looking like that over there in the Middle East right now. Israel is God's nation. That's the only nation that God ever had. It's the only nation He ever called out. But I want you to understand, God has used many circumstances in history to deal with it, to deal with Israel. He used Nebuchadnezzar. He used Alexander the Great. He even used Antiochus Epiphanes, didn't he? Antiochus Epiphanes is a type of the Antichrist. What did he do? That's when he gathered them together after we had the Maccabean revolt. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. And God brought them back together, and they got back into the land. They purified their temple worship, but then they went off into the type of people that Jesus met when he got there. What kind of people were they? They were politicians. That's all. Politicians. I guarantee you one thing. Any politician in this world today is nothing but a liar. That's just the way they are. That's what was going on when Jesus came on the scene. They knew who he was, but they were politically in control. They were politically in control. They were in with Caesar, and they didn't want to lose their political place in this world. We'll lose our nation and our political standing, so what were they going to do to the Messiah? Murder him. And they knew who the king of Israel was. They knew who he was. All these Jews over in Israel today, we talk about these Jewish synagogues. You know, Baruch Hashem. That's what we call it, blessed be the name, you know. He said, you will not see me again until you say what? Blessed be the name of the Lord. Well, look, we live in a church age, don't we? If Israel wants to come to God today, they better come through one of God's New Testament churches and just bow down and repent. That's all. That's the message in this land. All right? They'd like to skip over that. They'd like to skip over that and just jump into the glorious kingdom over here. But that's not the way it's going to happen. God's going to bring them low. He's going to bring them low. He even used Hitler, didn't he? Boy, that was a terrible thing. All those Jews that they killed in those death camps over there. Murdered millions of them. But what did it do? It drove them back to their land. Because God has an eternal purpose. God's plan of the ages. But still, they're not ready yet. They are not ready. They're still living in rebellion to God. God will have to have the tribulation period to ever bring them back to Him. And that's how He's going to do it. That's the story. All right, Herod was a builder of great cities. He built a great temple, but he was ruthless in his being. Ruthless. Ruthless. He murdered several of his own children. He murdered his wife. He was insecure. All right? Herod's title of King of the Jews was granted by Rome, but never accepted by the Jewish people at all. How many of you heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Qumran text? How about the Essenes? Those people went down there by the Dead Sea and they copied the Hebrew Bible. That's the oldest Hebrew Bibles we have in the world. It's what they found there at the Dead Sea Scrolls. I've been there. I've been to what they call the Scriptorium. I've been to the dome of the scrolls in Jerusalem, and I have seen those old scrolls. They were a group of Jews that would not accept the political political gratuities of the Roman Empire. They went down there and they totally would not, they didn't believe in any of the priests up there in Jerusalem or anything. They had their own services down there. They looked at Herod that he was not part of the Davidic family. And all of those that followed him, as far as they were concerned, were sold out rats. So there we have division. How many of you heard of that part of the story? By the way, these Essenes, many of them accepted the preaching of John the Baptist because it was much like what they were preaching already. Herod built a lot of pagan temples. Herod's royal title was not genuine at all. He ruled for about 30 years. His rule was filled with suspicion, fear, and murder. His relatives. His father was Antipater. His sons, Achillas, Antipater, Antipas Philip, and others. His wives were Doris, Miriam, which he murdered, and others. His contemporaries were Zachariah, Elizabeth, Mary, Joseph, Mark Antony, and Augustus, and Cleopatra. I want you to understand that's who were contemporaries with Herod the Great, okay? Now, let's look at some of this. In the third time that the angel of the Lord appears to Joseph, the third time that the angel of the Lord appears to Joseph. Let's go and look at that. Matthew 2, 19 and 20. Third time that an angel of the Lord appears to Joseph. 3 times now. 2, 19, 20. Betty Jean, you over there?
Yes.
You want to read that for me?
After Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who are trying to take the child's life are dead."
All right, now this isn't the last time that the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph. Herod the Great had died. All right? He died And now it was somewhat safe to go back. But now go down into 2:22 and verse 23, and let's see what they see there, what we see there. Many people haven't even ever looked at this place in the Bible. All right? 2. All right, Linda, are you over there? 2:22?
But when he heard that, how do you pronounce that?
Achilles.
Achilles was resigning over Judah instead of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And being warned by God in a dream, he turned aside into the region of Galilee.
All right, hey, in a what? Being warned of God again in hypnosis. He decided to go to Galilee. All right, he decided to go to Galilee. Now, Achilles. All right, let's look at these sons of Herod. All right, let's look at them. Achilles means the people's man or the people's chief. Now, supposedly Herod the Great died of an incurable disease. Some people say that worms ate him. All right. He was afraid that the Roman Empire would never look upon any of his sons as the great leader that he was. So he broke his empire up into 3 different pieces. All right. And we have Achilles was over Judea, Samaria, and Idumea. Antipas was over Galilee and Perea. Antipas or Antipater. And then we have Herod Philip II over Trachonitis. And by the way, what did John the Baptist make Herod mad about? Antipater. Why did he get mad at him? This all is tied right in here. This is very important.
Adultery or?
All right, he took his brother's wife. Now, Herod Philip II took his niece as his wife. These were a bunch of incestuous people, okay? And then his brother stole his niece. This is her uncle also. So her uncle stole her from his brother. And he married her. And John the Baptist said it's not legal for you to have your brother's wife. All right? She was not only his wife, but she was his niece. And she had been the wife of his brother, which was her other uncle. What a mess. But that was Herod's mess, okay? All right. This Achilles was a violent, vengeful man. He started out his reign by slaughtering 3,000 of the heads of state that his father had put over different ones. They're like governors and mayors over different towns and stuff. He slaughtered 3,000 of them. He was finally banished after 9 years. This is Achilles. So. Arche comes from Arche and Laos. His name does. Arche means head of the people, or the people's man. Now let's go on down a little bit further. And verse number 23, and he came and resided in a city called Nazareth, that was spoken to the prophet Micah, he shall be called a Nazarene. All right, Isaiah 11:1 and Isaiah 60 and verse 21. Now let's look at old John. My mother, when I was a little bitty kid, she used to call me John the Baptist. She didn't know what kind of a prophecy that was. But she used to call me John the Baptist when I was a little bitty kid. John the Baptist. I think my grandmother called me John the Baptist too. And I wasn't a Baptist at that time. But that's what they called me, John the Baptist. Let's go to Matthew, the 3rd chapter. Matthew means what?
Gift of God.
Gift of God. All right. Let's keep that. What's his other name? Levi. All right. Now just remember about Levi, Matthew, Levi. Matthew, Levi, what was his occupation when Jesus appeared to him and saved his soul? What was it?
Tax collector.
Tax collector. He had sold his people out. He was a rat and sold his people out. And he went to work for the Roman government and started collecting taxes. And remember, I told you last week that the tax collector, he didn't get any money for his job except what he could pilfer from the people. So if you owe 10% tax, he'd charge you 15% and take 5% for his own. Or maybe 25%, take 15%. Remember that little guy named Zacchaeus? What was Zacchaeus? Remember Zacchaeus? The guy in the mulberry tree? Huh? What was he? He was a tax collector. And how had he got rich? By pilfering people's lives and stealing their farms. Stealing their farms. All right, Matthew the 3rd chapter. Now in those days John the Baptist came preaching in the wilderness. John the Baptist. Now what should that be translated? It's not John the Baptist. What is it?
John the Dipper?
John the Dipper. John the Immerser. All right? This gets me in a lot of trouble. Turn this. This camera does not work like the old one. The old one just finally gave up the ghost. All right. John the Baptist should be John the Immerser. He's not John the Sprinkler. He's not John the Pourer, is he? Now in ecclesiastical domain, we have people that get poured on for baptism, and we have people that are sprinkled for baptism. Baptism is immersion. Marilyn, what is the word to sprinkle in Greek? What's the word? Rontizo. Rontizo, that's the word for sprinkling. And then what is the word for pouring? Nipto. Nipto. All right? Rontizo. Rontizo. Nipto. Almost wrote it in Hebrew. Nipto and baptizo. All right, baptizo. The Latin equivalent is mergio. Our word immerse comes from the Latin emergio. All right, so what does it mean? John the Dipper. That's what his name is, John the Dipper. Now in those days, John the Dipper came preaching in the wilderness. The Episcopalian Church, King James, when he translated his Bible, they told him, they said, hey, if we translate this word John the Immerser, that these our people will know that those Baptists are out there preaching the truth, because they were sprinkling. What are we going to do with this? Old King James said, don't translate it all, we'll just hide it. We'll hide the word. We'll just turn it right over to English from baptizo. We'll just say baptized, so they won't know. We won't admit it's different, and they will never know it, that we're wrong. He said what to them? Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Repent. Metanoia. Repent. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Got to get my Greek Bible out here so I can see some of it. I remember some of those words, but not all of them. Repent, for the kingdom of God is in heaven. Metanoia, that's what it is. I didn't want to lie to you. Metanoia. The word nous is a word for mind in Greek. Nous. The faculty of understanding, nous. Meta nous. It means to completely change your way of thinking. Now, there was a lot of religious people in Israel, just full of religious people. Gobs of them. They were called Pharisees. There were scribes. There were Levites. There was high priests. There was a Sanhedrin court. All of it. All of these people were, this is what was ruling Israel then. Now his story is, repent, the kingdom of heaven is at nigh. Who was on the throne of Israel? Esau's descendant. So he's an imposter on the throne. The kingdom of heaven is near. It's right here. Ugas. It's near. Right upon you. Okay, the kingdom of heaven. Because why? Why was the kingdom of heaven near them? Who had come on the scene? The real king of Israel. The real Messiah was on the scene. So the kingdom of heaven was near. Since the Messiah was there, he's the real king of glory, isn't he? The real king of glory. All right, let's go on down and look at what he says. Now he's telling all these people to repent. Every one of them. The Jews are supposed to repent. Why are they supposed to repent? Because they're politically malignant. Trash. File 13. For this is the one referred to by Isaiah the prophet. The voice of one crying in the wilderness. Now let's go to Hebrew. Okay? Because this is important. All right? Isaiah 40. The voice of him crying in the wilderness. By the way, this is quoted from the Septuagint, not from Hebrew. Most of the Jews read and studied the Bible from the Greek Septuagint, not from the Hebrew Scripture. Remember the Hebrews? Where were they? The ones that were studying the Bible in Hebrew? Who were these guys? Who's the ones that were the political elite? I mean, the non-political elite. Where did they live? Where? Down by the Dead Seas and in the Qumran caves, in that area. They were an elite group of very Orthodox Jews down there that lived in that area, and they would not accept any of the political system that was going on in the world. All right? The voice in the wilderness. Where were they? Where did they live? This bunch of political outcasts, so to speak. The Essenes, the Qumranians. Where they live? In the wilderness. That's where he preached. He preached down there where they were preaching. Okay? And it says, prepare the way of Jehovah. Jehovah. Prepare the way of Jehovah. The road of Jehovah. The rock. The road of Jehovah. And make straight in the desert a highway for our Elohim, for our God. For our God. So here now, we know from Hebrew who this is. Crying in the wilderness. Where was John the Baptist preaching? Out there in the wilderness. He wasn't preaching in Jerusalem, was he? He wasn't up there with those political sold outs. Okay? He's in the wilderness. All right? And then we have Jehovah. Make way the straight for Jehovah. Who is Jehovah? What does his name mean? He who shall become. This is the one that would become, John 1:14. Kaiho logo sarx again. And the Word, the Jehovah flesh, he became and dwelt among us. Read John 1:14, somebody for me. John 1:14. Dr. John, are you over there in John 1:14? All right. Well, we have Dr. John here, and we're going to have him go to John 1:14. Yes, sir.
And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth.
Right, that's beautiful. The only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. John 1:18 there, brother. Let's go on with that one now, just a little bit further down there. John 1:18. This is Jehovah now that has become flesh for himself, it says in middle voice in Greek.
No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, who is
that should be the only begotten what?
The one in
God.
the only begotten God,
Yeah, well, not Son, it's God. The only begotten is God.
who is in the bosom of the Father. He
The
is
one
declared.
being inseparable from the Father. Just like John 1:1. All right? Him and the Father, I and the Father are how many?
Inseparable, one.
One. So they're together, aren't they?
Together.
Everything they do together, huh? That's part of it. Do you take your spirit with you today, Brother Don? Brother David, did you leave your body at home?
No.
You didn't. All right. How about your soul? Did you bring your soul here today, Buddy Jean? You brought it with you, didn't you? It's all there. Okay, so there we have. We've got everybody here in the right place. Now, right there. Now, let's read that. Read the rest of that John 1:18.
who is in the bosom of the Father, he has declared him.
All right, that word he has declared him there, it says he has led himself out. And then John 1:1. In arche ein hologos, in beginning, kept on being the Jehovah. The Jehovah kept on being an inseparable part of the Godhead. That's what John 1:2 says. It says, Kai hologos ein proston theon. I know that means not much to you, but it means literally, and the Jehovah kept on being toward the God, proston theon. He kept on being an inseparable part of Godhead because he kept on being God. That's very beautiful. That one verse right there to wipe out the whole Jehovah Witness theology forever. That's it. Done. Done for. Because it wipes out the whole foundation of what they believe. The person of God, all the cults change. The person of God. Remember that. All right, the voice of one crying in the wilderness, make way, the way of Jehovah. Now, who's the way that John the Baptist is, who is he preparing the way for? Jesus. Who's Jesus? Jehovah. Jesus is Jehovah. All right? John 1:1 states that Jesus is Jehovah. John 1:14 states that Jesus is Jehovah. John 1:18 states that Jesus is Jehovah. The first chapter of the book of Revelation states Jesus is Jehovah. The 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John state that Jesus is Jehovah. That's the whole book. The whole Gospel the Gospel of John, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, and the book of Revelation teaches us one thing, that Jesus is Jehovah. And there, you go way back over there in the later part of the book, I think it's the 18th and 19th chapter of the book of Revelation, and it says, and there he was, and on his side was written the name, what? In Hebrew it would be Adonai, Ha-Adonai, King of kings and Lord of lords. And who is that? Jehovah, King of kings and Lord of lords. We cannot have any absolutely doubt that Jesus is Jehovah. That's who he is. Okay? Make ready the way of our God, Elohim. All right? Make his pathway straight. Now the whole old idea is they used to send heralds out and blow horns. And they had road crews. When a king was coming into any territory, they had to clean up the roads and make the roads all smooth, because the king wasn't going to ride in his carriage on a rough road. No way. If the king rode on a rough road, he had somebody crucified or beat up or something, because those people weren't taking care of the roads. Yes. Somebody... Well, yes, Brother Abe.
Is voice the same as speech for someone?
The voice, the sound of one crying in the wilderness. The sound, like a herald. Remember I said they blew the horn like the herald? Blowing the horn, the herald would blow the trumpet, and here would come the king following him, and people were supposed to come out and greet him and bow down to him. If they blew the trumpet, and they were supposed to come out. When the king came through your area, you didn't stay at home and watch TV or listen to the radio or play dominoes or anything like that. When you went out, when the king came through, they blew the horn, and you were supposed to be out there beside that road bowing down to the king. Now do you see the figure of speech here that is talking about? Show up, people. The Messiah is here, and get ready. When you hear the one blasting the horns, blowing the trumpets, get ready to bow the knee, because here is the God of the universe. Here is the Creator, according to Colossians, the 1st chapter. The Creator of heaven and earth. And John, it says that he made the worlds. He made the worlds. He held them together. John 1 and John, the 1st chapter, and Colossians, the 1st chapter, are so much alike. Here we have the Creator of the universe. He created it. Now John himself, look at John. Old John. He wanted. And John himself had a garment of camel's hair. Go to 2 Kings, the 1st chapter and verse 8. 2 Kings 1 and 8. John, you don't have your camel hair on today, brother. No. All right. I have really enjoyed that student that you sent to my class, that Cindy. She's a scholar.
She's pretty sharp, isn't she?
She's sharp.
Shouldn't let you get by
All
over
right.
much, does
She
she?
is sharp. She enjoys God's Word. I love to see people infected with love of God's Word. That's what I want to see. People love to learn about the Lord. All right. Who's got 2 Kings, the first chapter? 2 Kings. All right, sunshine.
What verse would you like me to read?
Verse 8. 2 Kings 1 and 8.
They replied, he was a man with a garment of hair and with a leather belt around his waist. The king said, that was Elijah, the Tishbite.
All right, Elijah. What does Elijah mean?
It means God.
Jehovah is God. Elijah, Jehovah is God. All right, now let's just think about who this guy was. All right? Who is John the Baptist? John the Baptist. Who is this guy? John the Baptist. Luke 1 and 17. Go to Luke 1 and 17. Luke 1 and 17. All right. Who's got Luke 1 and 17? Are you over there, Brett?
No, I should have been here.
Oh, you should have been there. Is anybody in the Cata Lucon? Don. 1 and 17. Don.
And he will go on before the Lord in the spirit and power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the disobedient to the wisdom of the righteous, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord.
All right. Now, Elijah, John the Baptist, there was going to be Elijah that would show up in the New Testament. There was going to be an Elijah. And this Elijah in the New Testament was going to turn the people and prepare a heart, prepare the heart of the people for the Messiah that was to come. Okay? There was going to be a person that would come forth in the spirit of Elijah. And how did Elijah dress back there in 2 Kings? A hairy-looking clothing with a leather girdle and everything. What it was is a belt around him that tied his skirts up. A long time ago. What? A long time ago. You get that, Brother Fred?
Yeah.
A long time ago. My grandma told me a story, my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother talked to me more than she talked to anybody on this earth, that's right. Graham, Hattie. But she told me about her brother. Her brother was pretty wealthy, Willie Paul. Willie was pretty wealthy, and he had servants. And among his servants was one black cook. He was a chef, a cook on his farm, his ranch. And this black man wore dresses. He wore a dress. Now that was pretty unusual for that time there. But in Africa, what kind of wear? The men wore what in Africa? The men wore what kind of clothing in Africa? The men wore dresses. Okay, wore dresses. They did. The American Indians here in the early time, in early America, especially the Lakota, now they had breechcloths underneath. But what did they wear? If you'll see a lot of the chiefs, what did they have around them? Especially in the one time, they had skirts. They wore skirts. Now during the Jewish time, just remember that. Now, did you ever hear that story about Willie having that cook that wore a dress? No. All right. My cousin Robin reminded me of that the other day. He said, my mother told me that, my grandmother told me that their cook that they had along when he was really old came to them, and he was the one that wore a dress. And I said, turn the light turned on. I remember what Grandma told me. The guy that wore the dress. And that would be a real good illustration to this place right here in the Bible. All right. Back when John the Baptist came on the scene, Jesus wore a dress. Did you know that? He wore a skirt. He did. They all did. They wore underclothes and everything, but they wore a skirt. And the hem of their garments. If you look at the priest, the high priest over here, if you look at these guys over here, what are they wearing in this picture up there? Dresses, skirts. And when they would go out into the wilderness, they would pull their skirts up and tie them up with this leather girdle. They'd pull them up so they wouldn't get their skirts tangled in the brush. and in the rocks and fall down. So they pull them up, they gird themselves if they got in a fight, first thing they do is pull up their dress, tie it up, so they wouldn't get tangled up. All right? So they had dresses. They wore dresses back then. That was a common thing. Now he had camel's hair, garments of camel's hair. When I went over into the Middle East, one of the first things I bought over there was a hat. I didn't have a hat with me, and it was pretty sunny and at times, and so we did a lot of traveling and into the sun, and I bought myself a hat made out of camel leather. Camel leather. And it was glued together, and I don't know whatever happened to that hat, but it fell apart not in the first good rain. You know, it looked good, but it wasn't put together real good. The glue must have been animal glue, and when it got wet, it fell apart. And they had clothing over there that was really rough. How many of you ever had an old wool blanket? Remember them old army blankets they used to get? You know, we used to get them at army surplus and everything else like that. If you had a wool blanket, you wanted a sheet or something between you and that wool blanket, because that thing was rough and scratchy. That's the kind of clothes that John the Baptist, he wore rough clothes. That's the kind of person that Elijah was. And Elijah and John the Baptist were very, very important characters in the Bible. Who appeared on the Mount of Transfiguration to the disciples that went up there with Jesus is what we call his, when he was glorified with them, the Mount of Transfiguration. Who was there?
Elijah, Moses.
Elijah and Moses.
You said three?
Elijah and Moses, yeah. And the sons. Elijah and Moses appeared in.
Aaron was there with his brother Moses?
No, Aaron wasn't there. Aaron got killed, remember? He was a bad boy.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, we have Elijah and Moses up there, and we have the son, and we have Elijah and Moses. Elijah was a very important character. And the Jews today, when they set when they have the what we call the Passover supper, they always go to the door and they holler for Elijah. Elijah, are you here yet? Because they know that Elijah is going to come before the Messiah comes. They didn't accept the Messiah. They missed the boat, people. They missed the boat when the boat came. Okay? They're not going to miss the boat the second time because they're going to accept the false Messiah. But then when he stands up in the temple there in the middle of the tribulation period and says, you worship me, I am God, some of them, at least 144,000 of them, is going to flee and go down to Petra, and then the Lord is going to protect them down there. All right. He's a garment of camel's hair. Now let's look at some other places in the New Testament about Elijah. We got Luke 1 and 17. How about John 1 and 21? John 1:21. Let's look at that real quick. John 1:21. Mark 9 and verse 11. Matthew 17, 10 and 11 and 12. Who's got John 1:21? Okay.
They asked him, then who are you? Are you Elijah? He said, I am not. Are you the prophet? He answered, no.
Okay. They asked him if he was Elijah and if he was Moses, the prophet. They looked at Moses as the prophet. Okay? The prophet. And Elijah. Now these were the Jews who were asking this question. Who are you? Are you Elijah? Are you the forerunner of the Messiah? He said, no, I'm not Elijah, but he was, wasn't he? All right, now we went to Luke 1 and 17, Matthew 17 and 10 and 11 and 12. Matthew 17. Doris, are you over there anywhere? Matthew, are you there, Matthew? Yeah. Okay, Matthew 17 and verse 10. Can you read that one for me? No?
Fine.
Okay. Matthew 17 and verse 10.
The disciples asked him, why then do the teachers of the law say that Elijah must come first? Jesus replied, to be sure, Elijah comes and will restore all things.
Okay. Go on a little bit further.
Okay, but I tell you, Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, but have done to him everything they wished. In the same way, the Son of Man is going to suffer at their hands.
All right, so there's it. Now Elijah did come, and who was Elijah? John the Baptist. That's the Elijah that was supposed to come. He was supposed to come. Mark 9 and verse 11. Now, Mark 9 and verse 11, and then Matthew 27, 49, well, actually 47 through 49. Look at Mark 9, 11, and 12. Mark 9, 11, and 12. Anybody there? You over there, Brett?
What number is it?
Mark 9 and 11 and 12. Anyone there at Mark 9?
Sorry.
Who's over there? Okay, Anna?
Then they asked him, why do the teachers of religious law insist that Elijah must return before the Messiah comes?
Okay, Emma.
Jesus replied, to be sure Elijah does come first and restores all things. When then is it written that the Son of Man must suffer much and be rejected. But I tell you, Elijah has come, and they have done to him everything they wish, just as it is written about him.
Okay, now it's talking about Elijah. Elijah is actually John the Baptist. He is not really John the Baptist, but he came in the spirit of John the Baptist. And this is the one the Jews are still looking for, and they missed the boat. They missed the boat when Jesus came, and they missed the boat when John the Baptist came, because he came in the spirit of Elijah. Now let's look a little bit more about him, okay? He had a garment of camel's hair, and leather belts about his waist, and his food was what? Locust and wild honey. Locust. Let's look at that. Now let's just think about. We'll go to let's look at some words about that are translated locust. Okay. One word is arbeh. Arbeh. A-R-B-E-H. That's Hebrew. That means locust. All right. Genesis 10 and verse 4. And another one is geb. Geb, like G-E-B or G-E-B. And that's a grasshopper or a locust in Isaiah 33 and verse 4. Now, I could give you like 100 scriptures for these, but I'm just giving you one, okay? And then there's another one called Chagab, and 2 Chronicles 7 verse 13. And there's another one called Tislaso. It's like T-S-E-L-A-T-S-A-L. And in Hebrew, it's a Sadhe, a lament, the Sadhe, and a lament. All right? And that means shadow. That means so many of them that they make a shadow over the land. Okay? That is a shadow. And in Greek, it's skia, Deuteronomy 28, verse 42. And then we have the word solon. In Leviticus 11 and verse 22. Solon means a devouring bald locust. Now let's go to Leviticus 11 and verse 22. Leviticus 11 and 22. That's Leviticus. This is the law for the Levites and for the people in Israel. What can they eat and what's clean and what's unclean. Leviticus 11 and 22. Anyone over there? Yeah. Leviticus 11 and 22. We're looking at this pretty closely, trying to figure it out. Verse 20. All right, anyone there? All right, Emma.
All swine and six that walk on all fours are to be detestable to you. There are, however, some winged creatures that walk on all fours that you may eat, those that have jointed legs for hopping on the ground. Of these you may eat any kind of locust, catadid, cricket, or grasshopper. If all other winged creatures have 4 legs, you are to detest.
All right. Now, so that tells you that John the Baptist could eat these creatures. In Greek, it's akrida. Akrida. That means to walk on tiptoes. Akrida. To walk on tiptoes. There are several different places in the New Testament, Matthew 3 and 4, Mark 1 and 6, and Revelation 9 and 3, and Revelation 9 and 7, akrida. Those things which walk on tiptoes. Now, John the Baptist could eat these locusts. Some people think that it was locust beans. We have locust trees out on my place, and there's locust beans on those locust trees. And if you go over to Israel, they'll tell you, well, maybe he ate wild crickets, these crickets, or these locusts out there, and also the locust bean. Whatever it was, that's what he ate. Because it was literally legal for him to do that. Now, John the Baptist took a vow. He took an unusual vow. What kind of a vow did he take? His mother actually took it for him, and his father. What kind of a vow did he take? What kind of a vow did his mom and dad take for him? That from his mother's womb he would be a what? A Nazarite. Nazarite. Now, a Nazarene and a Nazarite are two different things, aren't they? Nazarene's what? Somebody that lives in the city of Nazareth. All right, somebody that lives in the city of Nazareth. And a Nazarite was a person that took a vow, and he could not, and he lived like a priest lived. He was a voluntary priest, even though he wasn't a priest or even of a family of priests. If someone took a vow of the Nazarite, of the Nazarite's vow, in the Old Testament, what was one of the most famous Nazarites that ever lived? He was a big guy.
Samson.
Who? Samson. Samson took the vow of the Nazarite, but he didn't ever keep it, did he? Little bit. What a Nazarite, what he didn't touch anything dead, no dead creature. He could not eat grapes or drink wine. All right, and what else? He couldn't fool around with wild women either. Now the Nazarite, when he was a voluntary priest. And he would eat like the priests did when they were in priestly service, right in the tabernacle. And that's what he was. He was a voluntary priest, even though he didn't serve. Let's go on a little bit further, and I'm going to turn you loose on the world here in a minute. He had a leather belt around his waist, and he actually wore a dress just like Willie's cook did on the old ranch a long time, years ago. They wore dresses back then. Maybe his family came from Africa and they were really close customs to what they did. All right, so he had a dress made out of camel's hair, and he would pull it up with this leather girdle as he traveled. And then it said Jerusalem was going out to him, and all Judea and all the districts around the Jordan, and they were being dipped. They were being dipped. They weren't being baptized. They were being dipped. They were being immersed. Now let's go back. The history of baptism. Not Ron Teasel, not Nipto, but Bob Teasel. Okay? The history of baptism. In history, who were the first people, of course, according to the rabbis, that ever dipped anybody? Who was the first person that ever dipped? His servants. He circumcised them and he dipped them. Who was it? Abraham. All the way back then, Abraham baptized his servants back there. And then we have anyone that wanted to become a proselyte to Israel or to the Judaistic faith had to go, and they had to learn the law of Moses, and they had to get up in a synagogue someplace and recite the different vows that they were to take and what they were supposed to do and everything else. And then they were to be immersed, and they were dipped. They were baptized, and they were immersed, and baptism is a picture of death. That's what it is, a picture of death. Romans 6 and verse 5. Well, let's go to Romans, the 6th chapter. Romans 6. Romans, the 6th chapter. I'm doing the book of Romans on Wednesday night. We're teaching the book of Romans from Greek. The book of Romans is like a miniature gospel. Romans 6 and verse 5. All right? 6 and 1 through 5. What shall we say then? Are we to continue in sin that grace might increase? May it never be. How shall we who have died to sin live in sin? Or do you know that all that of us who have been baptized have dipped into his death, into the death of Jesus Christ, have been baptized into his death, and therefore we have been buried with him through baptism into death, in order that Christ was raised from death through the glory of the Father, so we too might walk in newness of life. For if we have become united with him in the likeness of his death, and what is that? Baptism. Certainly we shall also be in the likeness of his resurrection. So, I baptized about 30 people here. Did I don't, did I? How many people in your family? Quite a few in your family. 30 or 40 people here. Quite a few. Your mother. Yeah, baptized your mother. I baptized her to the bottom of the baptistry all the way down there, remember? She tried to stick her arms up above, and I believe in baptism, so I took her to the bottom. She got baptized. All right? Not part of her, but all of her. All right, all of her were baptized, okay? That's what it means. You go out Green Lawn Cemetery or out there at Hilltop, or whatever, Hillcrest out there, is any arms or anything sticking up out of the ground out there? They didn't bury all of them, did they? All right, I believe in that. I believe in dipping them. I remember one of my old students, she was a flute player here in the orchestra for a long time. When I baptized Rosalie up there, I went up there and we were shaking hands and everything. Brother Phil was up there and she went up there, Brother Phil, and she said, do you see how that Baptist baptized that woman? He took her down to the bottom. None of them were sticking above water. And that's the way you really baptize somebody. And Brother Phil, he said, that's right. Baptism. Baptism. When I baptize somebody, if I talk, I said, have you repented of your sins? That's what I asked them. Yeah. Okay, then we're going to bury you. You're buried in the likeness of Christ, and you're raised into what? Newness of life. Buried in his likeness and raised in newness of life. That's what baptism is. It's a picture of death, burial, and resurrection. And when they baptize these proselytes, and we'll go into this a little bit because we're running out of time today. When they baptized the proselytes, they died to their old ethnic background and they were raised anew to Judaism. And what John the Baptist is saying to all these Jews, you people are dirty. You need to lay it down. It's time to walk off and leave it. There is no room in God's world for Judaism today. It was supposed to be laid down when Jesus came on the scene. That was the end of it. We have the book of Galatians and the book of Hebrews written to those Jews to try to get them straightened out. They still aren't listening. To this day, they haven't listened. Thank you for your attention today. Go out and do something eternal. And thank you for enduring those hard seats also. We'll get into this next week and we'll look at it. Are you enjoying this? Did we go too deep? Is that all right? You did understand it, didn't you? You caught it? You caught the ball? All right. Brett, are you coming? Who's coming up here?
Yeah.
You going to come up here? Are you going to be the big shot today? All right. Well, we looked at Hebrew, Greek, and Latin, and now we're going to look at Brett.
Oh man, I got some work cut out for me, huh?
Yeah.
All right, sorry you guys, I was gone last week. I had to go to a triathlon. Of course, I didn't run in it.